What's going on YouTube? It's Maffu here, and today we have something different. I will be telling you all the best pairings from KVK 1, 2, and Season of Conquest. Now, I'm skipping KVK 3 because obviously KVK 3 has Season of Conquest commanders. I'll also have timestamps down below, so if you want to skip to whatever part you are interested in, skip ahead. It will be sorted by commander. What commander will be primary, and skip ahead to whatever part. Also, there'll be 3 parts of this video. I know I said KVK 2 and 3, but these videos get kind of long, so I'll be splitting it up into 3 parts. This will be KVK 1. Anyways, let's get into it. Let's start off with KVK 1. And I already went out and picked out all the commanders I think you should theoretically be able to run in KVK 1. There's some other options, obviously, but I would not touch on them because they're just not going to be as good on the open field. Now, some people might argue, yo, you missed Joan, you missed some Huptup. What are you doing? You miss Hermann. Actually, I did miss Hermann. Hermann can be used. But Joan and the other ones, it's just better to run another damage march rather than having a buffing march in KVK 1 unless you're running 5 marches. So if you're running 5 marches, you could consider the Joan, but that's just for the peak of the peak, the 0.001% of players. So we'll be using these commanders. Oh, and I forgot Bjorn as well, because Bjorn can be used as well. Just looking past, okay, we got everyone. Alright, let's talk about it. Commander pairing. So what is a commander pairing? When you play Rise of Kingdoms, you'll have 2 commanders, a primary and a secondary commander. This will be shown by the commander on the left being the primary and the commander on the right being the secondary. Let's start off with free-to-play. What free-to-play KVK 1 marches should you be running? Now, I'll be ranking these on a tier list of S+ all the way down to F. Now, I already kind of sorted out all the bad people, so there won't be any really Fs. Maybe probably the lowest tier will be C because I really cleared out all the bad pairings. Let's start with free-to-play. And we will start with Bjorn. Bjorn only has 1 pairing in KVK 1, and it'll be Bjorn Sun Tzu. Now, I would actually rate this as a B tier march. I don't think it's that good. I personally tried it out in KVK 1. I did not like it. I preferred Sun Tzu's other pairing that I really liked, which is Sun Tzu Aethelflaed, which is a great free-to-play march. I don't think Bjorn Sun Tzu is that worth running. It is still a B tier. It's middle of the pack. I believe this will be Bjorn's only pairing, so that's why I went him out of the way first. We'll go on to another free-to-play march, which would be an Archer March. A free-to-play Archer March, we'll look at Hermann. Because Hermann only has really 1 pairing, it'll be Hermann Kusunoki. Now, is this march great? No, this is not a good march. I would actually drop this down to C tier. Now, this march has some benefits where both these commanders are archers. You get some bonuses, but there's a much better free-to-play Archer March. That's why this is C tier. The other free-to-play Archer March is not that good as well, so free-to-play archers, KVK 1, are not very good. I will say that. Now, another commander that only has 1 pairing would be Belisarius. Now, if you're running Belisarius on the field, you are probably farm killing. Belisarius is only good for farm killing. Do not run Belisarius in a ball fight. You will look stupid. I'm trying to save you. Do not run him in a ball fight. Do not run him as your main march. You can make a farm killing march with Belisarius primary, and you'll be pairing him up with double C. This is the only reason you would use them. You would run around and kill farms. That's it. Which you don't even get that much of KVK 1. This would be a KVK 2 march where you can actually start farm killing. I don't think it's that good. Do not run this. Belisarius, you are benched, my friend. So that eliminates 3 commanders, because we will not be looking at these commanders again in any of the tier lists. All the other commanders probably will get used some way or another in another tier list. Let's start with Sun Tzu. Now, this will be Sun Tzu primary. There's a lot of great marches with Sun Tzu secondary we'll take a look at. This will be Sun Tzu primary. Now, I'll actually put Sun Tzu Aethelflaed as a tier march in KVK 1. This is an amazing march, and it's probably the best free-to-play march in KVK 1. Now, I will say there's a slightly better pairing in KVK 1, but it is kind of difficult to get as free-to-play. This march will be the best free-to-play march you could find. Now, there's some people that do like Baibars, but I believe Sun Tzu is just a way better commander. And Aethelflaed is very, very easy to get. You just get her sculptures through the Expedition game mode. Other pairings that Sun Tzu have as Sun Tzu primary is Sun Tzu YSG. Now, this march I'll actually move up to the S tier. This is an amazing march. Now, the reason it's not S+ is it's a little bit squishy. It's on the squishier side, and there's better pairings than this. Way better. So this is possible to get as free to play. Now, I will say, if you are going YSG in KVK 1, you must be expertising him. He is not good. if he's not expertise. Now you can argue that he can be decent, but he's really good when he gets expertise, and he's a great free-to-play March due to the fact he can be used for chaining. Not only can he be used for chaining, but YSG, we'll talk about this later, but he can be paired with one of the best commanders in the game right now, USH, which is Season of Conquest commander, so he can be used very, very late into the game as well. So that is it that I would run for Sun Tzu primary. Now you could argue that there's some other marches like Martel secondary or Pyrrhus secondary. Now I wouldn't touch these because these commanders are better as primary and with Sun Tzu as the secondary. We'll talk about that later though. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's put Sun Tzu back down here and we'll talk about Baibars primary. Now Baibars primary is a very interesting commander because Baibars is very, very good by himself. He has great AoE. There's not a lot of cav commanders in the game with AoE. You'll find that out later on. He's great because he does have AoE, and his best pairing would be Eighth of Flood. Now, we've had Sun Tzu Eighth of Flood at A tier. We're going to move Baibars Eighth of Flood down to the B tier. Reason being, Sun Tzu is a better commander than Baibars. Plain and simple, Sun Tzu has Rage Regeneration, he's 5 target AoE, and he's just way better. Due to the fact that he had skill damage bonus. He gets a 20% skill damage bonus on his AoE and his secondary's AoE, so he's just great all around. But this is a great March. Now obviously there are several other pairings you could do with Baibars, but Baibars primary would be either Aethelfled or YSG. Now I'd put Baibars YSG as an A tier. Now there is a very specific reason why you should not run this March, and that is because you're wasting YSG. You're wasting YSG's potential with a purple commander. You should be pairing YSG with another great commander, like even Sun Tzu is just so much better. But this is a possible March. If you're a Cav main and don't have Sun Tzu for some reason, everyone should get Sun Tzu. But if you don't have Sun Tzu for some reason, this is a possibility. Okay, that is it for Sun Tzu. Let's look at Kusunoki. Kusunoki is similar to Sun Tzu, and Baibars is that he only has like 1 or 2 pairings, and his pairing would be C tier. Kusunoki is the worst of the purple commanders that I have on this list. He is not great, he does very low skill damage, and he doesn't really have a lot of bonuses. Like Sun Tzu has rage regen, Sun Tzu has skill damage. He does not really do much, and he's only 3 target AoE. Both Baibars and Sun Tzu are 5 target. But this is still a decent March for an archer main if you're free to play in KVK 1. Now I will say you could possibly go YSG with Kusunoki. This is a better March. Now you are wasting YSG. I do not recommend this. That is it for the primary commanders. Now for the legendary commanders, let me line them up real quick and then I'll start from the left and go to the right. Alright, I moved around the order, and the reason I moved around the order was because these 4 commanders should not be primaries. These make up for decent or great secondary commanders, but these are not primary commanders. All the commanders to the left of my mouse here can be primary. Let's start with El Cid. Now I'll actually put El Cid in the A tier. Now you might think El Cid is a legendary, surely he's one of the best. No, El Cid is not one of the best. He has a very, very big flaw where he gets a lot of additional damage when his March gets under 50% health, which is bad because you want to do the most damage when you're full health because you do the highest skill damage. Now I will say that El Cid is a great rally commander due to the fact that he gets a bonus when he's under 50% health, but in KVK 1 you don't really want to put gold heads or anything to El Cid because it's kind of a waste because there's so many better commanders down here. Now for pairings, you could pair El Cid with any of these 4 commanders. El Cid primary with Thutmose secondary, El Cid primary with YSG secondary, El Cid Aethelfled, El Cid Mehmed. Now, will these pairings be good? I don't think so. I don't think El Cid is amazing in KVK 1. If you were going to pair him for a rally in KVK 1, obviously you would want to pick YSG. YSG is great anti-swarm, or Thutmose, because Thutmose is just a great commander. And hey, this would be a decent March. Now for tiers, I don't really know where to put El Cid, I'm being honest. He doesn't really get used much in KVK 1. He would not be in your 5 March. If you're running 5 Marches KVK 1, if you're a big whale, you would not use El Cid. I'd probably put him in between A and B, but he is not great, and I'm actually going to remove him from the list because he does not get used again. Now I messed up my order there, but we do have Richard. Now Richard can be used on the field. Now I do not recommend it in KVK 2 and beyond, but in KVK 1, he is actually pretty decent on the field. I would put him as an A tier. Now, would you pair him with this and that? I would say Richard has mainly 2, maybe 3 pairings. First and foremost, Richard Martel. This is a crazy March. It will not die. This March will not die. and it'll be super tanky. Now, will it do a ton of damage? It'll be damage over a long period of time. It's not going to do great in a ball fight because it does not have AoE. This March performs well while getting swarmed. Another pairing for Richard you could run is Aethelflaed. Now, I would actually drop Richard Aethelflaed down to the B tier, and yes, Richard Martel was an A tier. I'll move Martel down here, but this would be a C tier March. Now, this would be a potential 5th March for a big whale. I don't recommend running this March. It is a debuffer. It doesn't do much damage. It will debuff the enemy. It will slow them, and so on and so forth. Now, the last potential March for Richard would be a Sun Tzu. Now, Sun Tzu is just great with any infantry commander, and even like cav commanders Sun Tzu can do good with. I'll talk about that later. But for Richard, you can run a Richard Sun Tzu, and I would actually put this as a B tier. It would probably be slightly better than the C tier March, but it would not trade great, and I don't recommend it. That is it for Richard. I'm not a big fan of Richard. I don't think you should run him on the field. Now, he does have some very niche cases if you're a big whale that you could possibly run him, but let's talk about Thutmose. Now, Thutmose actually has the best pairing in KVK 1, in my opinion. Thutmose YSG. If you can run this March in KVK 1, you are golden. You'll love your life. This will do so much damage. You'll get the best reports in KVK 1. It's a great rally. It's a great on the field. You will love it. This is the best March. Now, there are some contenders for a great March or best March as well, but I believe this is the best one. And this will be an S+ tier March. If you have YSG and you have Thutmose, you should be running this on the field. You should pair these commanders up together 100% of the time because it is so strong. Now, for other pairings, you could potentially do a Mef mid. I would drop that down to an S tier. It's still going to be great, but it won't be as good as the YSG. Now, if you guys don't know, YSG is actually an archer commander, and he does give bonuses like defense to archers, alongside his other skills where he gets a 50% skill damage bonus, while Mehmed only has a 20% skill damage bonus. Looking for other pairings, you could potentially run an Aethelflaed. I would drop this down even more to an A tier. It's a decent March, but depending if you're an infantry main and you have a Thutmose and Aethelflaed, it could be okay, but I still don't recommend running this March. You should pair it with one of these two commanders, preferably YSG. Now, I will say, if you invested all your gold heads into Thutmose, you could run a purple commander with him. I would drop this down to the B tier. Thutmose plus Kusunoki. It is not great. I will die on that hill. This March is not great, but it is a potential March, and it could be good if it's all you have. That is it for Thutmose. Now we have Martel. Now, Martel is an interesting one. He does have an S+ tier March, in my opinion. Martel YSG. Now, this is a great March if you're an infantry main, and you might be wondering, why would you run an archer commander with a infantry commander? That is because YSG is an exception, and there are a lot of exceptions in this game where they could do a bonus to one troop type, but still be a great secondary commander. Secondary commander does not really count what troop type you are. If you're a primary, you typically want to go the troop type that your primary commander is. Since Martel is an infantry commander, you'd be running infantry with this March. This is an S+ tier March, and I believe it might be on comparison of Thutmose YSG, partially because YSG is so good, but partially because Martel is also really good in KVK 1. Plus, he's really easy to expertise. Now, I say really easy with a grain of salt. He is not very easy, but if you win MGE, which is Mightiest Governor, you can get a lot of his sculptures. Now, I will say there's a lot of great Martel marches. Now, I will only highlight two because these are the two you should only run. You either run them with YSG or you can run them with Sun Tzu. Now, I'd put Martel Sun Tzu as an A tier. I don't think it's quite S because it's slightly weak. Actually, no, I'd put it as. I'd put it as. In KVK 1, it'll be an S tier. If you run this March in KVK 2, though, you're doing some things wrong. These will be the only two marches for Martel. He is a great commander. He can be used primary and secondary, and he's a garrison commander too. He will be the main garrison in KVK 1. If you don't have him, if your kingdom doesn't have him, you're kind of screwed. Someone's got to have him expertise in KVK 1 for garrison. Let's talk about Pyrrhus. Now, Pyrrhus is a great commander, and I'm actually going to put him in the S+ tier as well. Partially because YSG is really good, but partially because Pyrrhus is really good. Now, Pyrrhus is potentially one of the most underrated commanders in this game by far in KVK 1. Not a lot of people run him until recently, where they released a commander in KVK 2 that pairs well with Pyrrhus. Now, if you're an infantry player in KVK 1, I recommend going Pyrrhus over Martel due to KVK 2. Now, what am I saying is that Pyrrhus pairs well with a KVK2 commander. Let's see if I can find him really quick. And boom, here he is. This is CJ. That's his nickname. Now, I actually don't know his real name off the top of my head, but we call him CJ in Rise of Kingdoms. Now, CJ is a smite commander that gives buffed by normal damage, and Pyrrhus increases normal damage. So using Pyrrhus primary with CJ secondary, you'll increase his normal damage, and then the smite damage will do more. It's just a little bit complicated, but once you get to KVK2, you'll understand. But that is partially why people should invest in Pyrrhus, because he can be used later in the game. Now, obviously, you can also run Pyrrhus with Sun Tzu. I would also put this at A tier. It'll be similar to Martel. I feel like you should run one of these two. Now, if you have both Martel and both Pyrrhus expertise, let me explain what you could possibly do. Whenever you run into a dilemma where you don't have enough commanders, you gotta look for this guy, Mehmed. He's a great secondary, and you can pair him with almost anyone because he's a leadership commander, and he does some AoE damage, plus he buffs the skill damage of the primary commander and the secondary commander, which is himself. And he also increases your unit capacity, so you can have bonus units in the march. Another great commander you can pair with literally anyone is Aethelflaed. Aethelflaed is also a leadership commander, 5 target AoE, pretty good overall. Or I did not mention, but you could pair Martel with Pyrrhus. Now, Martel would be the primary in this too, because Martel buffs the second damage, so when Pyrrhus' skill goes off, it'll do bonus damage. That is a little niche thing that I didn't say, because this march is not great. You kind of want to pair marches with AoE commanders, because you are going to be ball fighting. Now, if you don't know what ball fighting is, I do have a guide on it, but yeah, you'll be ball fighting, so you kind of want it in an AoE march. Next, we have Hannibal. Now, Hannibal is an interesting commander, and that is because he is a VIP commander. You can get him completely expertise for just spending money. There are 2 commanders like that in the game, Hannibal and Minamoto. Now, the reason I have him up here is because a lot of whales get him expertise and run him in KVK1. Now, who do they pair him with? There's a lot of options. One of them is even Julius Caesar. And if you do run Hannibal, I do recommend you run him with Julius Caesar if you have Julius Caesar expertise. Now, Julius Caesar is the first Mightiest Governor event in the game, so some players might get him expertise, but he's kind of rare to get him expertise. So you could also run him with Aethelflaed. You can run him with basically any commander, Mehmed, YSG, even maybe a Martel. There's a lot of commanders you can run him with. And I wouldn't stress too much on this march, because this will not be one of your better performing marches. It'll be a mid-tier march regardless. I would put him around B tier. He is not worth the money spent. Now, I will say that some of the other rewards for the VIP tiers that he's in are worth it. Like, there's one where you get a lot of books of Covenant, which you use to upgrade your castle. Those are worth it. But he'll be put down on the bench because he's not going to get used again. Let's look at Minamoto. Now, Minamoto is an interesting commander because he's also a commander you can expertise for completely free, and he's an S+ tier commander. He is amazing, and he has a lot of pairings. Now, his S+ tier would be this pairing. Now, he does have some pairings in the other tiers, and we'll look at those in a second. But this march is absolutely crazy, and I highly recommend it if you're a cavalry main. Now, looking at the S tier march, he does have an S tier march. And I would actually consider Mina Baibars an S tier march. Mina is one of the best commanders in KVK1. He does so much skill damage. So if you pair him with another Cav commander, Baibars is a 5 target AoE, plus he gives bonuses to Cav stats. This will just be an amazing march that you can run. Another great march that you can look at is Mina Mehmed. These are both S tier marches, and I highly recommend both of them. Now, going on to the A tier march. These marches are slightly worse, but I would say an A tier march is actually Mina Sun Tzu. Now, this is a great march. Honestly, it could be an S tier march. I haven't personally ran it. That's why it's an A tier. I know Mina Baibars is good. I haven't personally tested Mina Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu has a 5 target AoE. Sun Tzu AoE actually generates rage. He has some troop damage reduction, or is it? I think he reduces incoming damage by 10%. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And he buffs skill damage by 20%. So this is just another great march. Now, for the B tier, I would put Mina CC. Now, there's a reason why this march is B tier, partially because it is a single target march. And I believe you will get better reports with any of the AoE commanders that I looked at today. Literally any of these can get paired with it and as secondary, and I believe it would do better than this march. Now, someone might have to test that because I'm not 100% sure, but that is my theory. And that concludes KVK1. I hope you guys enjoyed. This will be a 3-part series, so you guys will see the next part coming soon, KVK2 and KVK3. This is just some of the content I can produce in the off season, so I hope you guys will enjoy it. Anyways, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.